took place this past day in the nation's capital, the Million Muslim March in Washington, D.C. Of course, that name was repudiated by the organizers, and by the time it was finally held, it was being known as the Million American March Against Fear. And that in and of itself proved to be highly inaccurate. The figure that I heard from reporters on the scene was that the total number measured not in tens of thousands or hundreds, but in a few dozen would be more like it. But in any event, regardless of the name or of how many people showed up, their point was to simply say that there are good American citizens of the Islamic faith who were looked upon with suspicion. And with that as a prologue, let's talk a little bit about this tonight with a return guest who was last with us talking about racial issues in the wake of the Trayvon Martin verdict. Royalyn Reed, CEO of the firm Consumer and Market Insights. They're online at their initials, thecmiteam.com. And good to have you on the program tonight. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, Jim. Glad to be with you.
Absolutely. The first thing I thought when I heard about this was that the day in and of itself, unless they did and said exactly the right things, this could only be looked upon as a provocation. Sure, are they within their rights to so do? Yes, absolutely. But again, it's like building that mosque near Ground Zero. Yes, the purpose of the mosque was supposed to be some sign of brotherhood, but nonetheless, it was inevitable that a lot of people would take it as rubbing salt in the wound. And if you really wanted to be conciliatory, you would have found another way to be conciliatory. So this group this past day, I understand their point, and in fact, I agree with their point that there are, in fact, many Muslims who are good American citizens who are still looked upon with suspicion, and that should stop. Having said that, I thought that the timing, sticking it smack dab in the middle of the nation's capital on the 9/11 anniversary, unless they did and said exactly the right things, I thought that was a mistake. Your thoughts?
You know, Jim, I agree with you wholeheartedly, because if you just think about what 9/11 means to us, it's a time for Americans to come together unified, one focus, one purpose on, such a painful thing that happened in our country, but also it brought unity. When we look back, just how we were just unified from Congress on down and up. And for this to happen, as you said, the message is important, but it was not unified. Even the first advertising you heard was just about the Muslim March versus, tied to 9/11. So good cause, right idea, just wrong time.
Yeah. I note that the number of people who turned out so very, very, very few. Boy, I'll tell you, if you're going to call something like this, and especially to give it that name, and of course the original name and the final name both wound up with the word million in it, and when you show up with people who could hardly form two baseball teams, I mean, that's in and of itself certainly undercuts their message. If there was some kind of unity of we don't want to be pushed around, the answer that they demonstrated, whether it's true or not, is there aren't that many Muslim Americans who feel very put upon.
Absolutely, and that's one thing as well, because when you look at this organization, which a lot of times happens, we are talking about American Muslims, which is different from Al-Qaeda, but it seems like a lot of American Muslims made a point in not showing up to say that either they chose to honor the day a different way, but they were not unified, or definitely did not show their unity today for the timing of the event.
Yeah, I mean, just here in the nation's capital area, I mean, this is a 5 million plus metro area population here, and there are, I don't know how many, but certainly there are dozens of mosques in this area. There are a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I would think that if no one had traveled more than 50 miles to this, that if there was a significant level of discontent in the Islamic community, you could have certainly got a couple of thousand out there.
Exactly, and one page, and that's the unfortunate thing, because you look at it, and as you said, a good cause, right cause, wrong time, but you just see the implications in it, because right now what everyone is saying is American Muslims, and I think it's very clear that a half dozen or more do not represent African American Muslims in the United States of America. And then two is just to, pull away from their cause as well as to, link a group of people to something that's not representative.
There was, I'm told, a moment of silence for the victims of 9/11. There were some other things, which was certainly very appropriate. There were other things that I would have to put into the questionable category, in which there were calls, I think, for an end to, quote, all terrorism, and they were linking acts that Al-Qaeda has pulled, like 9/11 and related attacks, with, for example, people hurt in U.S. retaliation strikes against Al-Qaeda in, say, Pakistan. Unfortunate in the latter case, but it is hardly the same thing. We're not going out looking for people to kill when you are, in fact, in the process of defending yourself. There was a moral equivalence drawn there that I didn't care for. And I'm told that from one reporter on the scene that there are even a few people at this rally, and a few, so we'll call it a few, but nonetheless they were there, who claimed that 9/11 itself was a vast conspiracy, a government excuse to give the government a reason to take out the Taliban. Yes.
Unfortunate as well as, for the day. The good thing is just seeing that how America has responded to this event. And that was one thing. There was some talk before is, of course, there were a few more demonstrations. There were some people there who were more or less heckling or expressing their views differently. And we know that the bikers came and were expressing their and honoring 9/11 victims. But the important thing is with these other rallies is we did not want, and I don't think any American wanted, the attention taken away from one honoring, a little over 3,000 Americans who lost their lives. Of course, the others who gave so much with even during the aftermath, but also too is to the unity that it represents in our country for that day. So with that, I think that's the important thing, that those things were not lost for America. The other thing, unfortunately, with the American Muslims, a good message was really diluted.
Yeah, more to come. Stay with us. I'm going to come back and we will address as well the clash of demonstrations, and there were some hard feelings. Nothing really serious happened. Some catcalls, I guess, but that's also worth exploring with Royal & Reed from CMI. TheCMIteam.com is their website. 1-866-50-JIMBO. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Jimbo Hanna Show at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626, as we're talking with Royal & Reed, who is the CEO of TheCMIteam.com. We're looking at some of the aspects of this 9/11 observance, including the group that had the permit, which would be to say the people behind the Million American March Against Fear, which turned out to be way, way short of that, and also the people who didn't get a permit. Some of the motorcyclists who had wanted, in fact, a permit to gather. They didn't get one. They showed up anyway, which is their right. They just weren't able to get any of the special dispensation, I guess, that goes with a park police permit as such. And they were supposedly there for the same reason, Royalyn. But I don't know that there weren't some antagonisms there. Again, I don't know the extent to which the members of the bikers gathering had any difficulty distinguishing between Muslims who are loyal to this country and those who are not. It would seem that if, in fact, you accept the premise of the March Against Fear, that there would be no difference of opinion at all. Everybody was there to honor the victims of 9/11.
And then, Jim, of course, as you said, that's definitely the way it should have been. But also, too, when we look at the premise that it was built upon, even, with the organization who planned the March Against Fear, which is the Muslim Political Action Committee, AMPAC, as they call themselves, and they're known for. It started off with one name, and it just evolved along the way. And see, unfortunately, we see there's just that foundation of change versus a foundation and a clear focus. And we've seen that again with another group that was responding or reacting to this group, and even we know as the demonstrators that were there as well. Now, fortunately, the groups were not as large as they were hoping or saying, but what we truly see when we see that focus was not unified within the groups or clear, that's when you really can see problems and confusion that can come where just among a group of people.
Mm-hmm. And then just to really muddy the waters considerably and to add credence to the thought that American Muslims are being mistreated, the Florida idiot, the Florida pastor known for Koran burning, Reverend Terry Jones, and his associate pastor have both been arrested in Mulberry, Florida, as they were on their way to set fire to almost 3,000 copies of the Koran. So the charge that was used, unlawful transporting of fuel, something of that nature, an interesting charge to say the least. But you do wind up with a few squirrely cases like that.
Yeah.
And again, obviously that does not represent very many people, but some, certainly.
Yes, and as you say, I guess that just happens when you look at a big group of people in the masses. But, just going back to the point we were talking about earlier, the most important thing is our country did come together and the focus remained where it should have been.
Well, we have come together more or less. Certainly the country's unity is not what it was on September the 12th of 2001.
This is true.
And at the time, I wondered how long it would last, and, well, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, maybe, something like that.
Yes.
Stay with us, more to come on The Bohannon Show as we talk with Royland Reed of thecmiteam.com, and we'll be back in a moment. Thanks for being with us on The Jim Bohannon Show for this Wednesday, September 11th of 2013. We're talking tonight with Royland Reed from thecmiteam.com and looking at our observance of this day. I must tell you that I had someone this past day say to me, I wonder how long we're going to keep doing this in terms of the observance of same. And my thought was probably within the lifetime of most adults, let's say 40 plus, I would think. I grant you, as I noted at the beginning of this hour, that there are people in middle school now for whom 9/11, Kennedy assassination, Lincoln assassination, all history book stuff, they weren't around. They don't remember it. But having said that, how long do you think, and are we overdoing it? Are we too much into remembrance?
Well, I think, too, is, Jim, we have to also look at what it means to us and what it meant back there. It's almost like with the Kennedy assassination or, different events like that. People can remember exactly where they were, what they were doing, and just their initial feeling. Now, like you said, of course, the generations will change, but it is still really fresh with us as well.
Yeah.
And is that truly a bad thing or really a good thing as well? The other thing that we can focus on, too, is where do we go from here? Or how can we truly begin to celebrate and in memory or memorialize? Now, we shouldn't forget, but the form may take a different, the format may be different. And that's what we need to really look at, too, is where do we go from here, and how do we make an impact? You also mentioned earlier, Jim, that our country's different. How we were back then, 12 years ago, we're seeing a lot of different things. Of course, we've experienced things in the past few years that have really, kind of reshaped our country in a lot of ways. So with that even been said, how can we build something that still means unity? Here, seeing heroes. Mm-hmm. To look at even some of the acts of kindness towards the family members. Those things we can always put back into our country, and we really need to, re-energize ourselves. It would be great if we do it more often, but at least it could be one day that we can all come together.
It would be nice if that were the case. And the passage of time will inevitably mean a dimming of the purpose of 9/11, simply because for those who were not here at the time, it is just another date in a history book. It was not the seared memories of that moment, watching the TV set and the plane flying into the World Trade Center, et cetera, and so on. I mean, you stop and take a look at an event like, say, Pearl Harbor. And for people, of course, who were alive and old enough to understand when Pearl Harbor happened, that is a day that will always be remembered. And yet, in terms of national consciousness, December 7th rolls by with regularity. And, sure, on media outlets like this, we will make note of the fact. But for most of the people in the audience, it would be along the lines of, yeah, that's right, yeah, Pearl Harbor. So there will be a dimming with time. One can hope that we can learn at least a few lessons about vigilance, about the balance of security and freedom. There are things that we can do, Royal and Reed, to make this a useful as well as a positive observance.
Absolutely, and we know the differences. Even, of course, unfortunately, what we started off talking about with the March Against Fear, that is just real, that can go across any kind of group. So hopefully we'll continue to evolve as a country in those basic principles and things that will make us stronger as individuals, as a country, and just the various systems and that our country is built upon.
Have we reacted well to our promise under these trying times? This, of course, was a challenge. Some would say maybe a test of the country. In the main, do you think the United States has reacted well to this test, this challenge?
Well, that's a very good question. I think there are so many dynamics, involved, and I think a lot of what we hear is a lot of mixed comments, and it kind of even depends on, where you stand. One thing for sure we know, at least in looking at some of the stories just around the family, those things that really matter, as well as the first responders. We know that our country is stronger and better in some areas, in a lot of positive ways that we've seen that around awareness. But also, too, we still mark 9/11 in a lot of ways, pre-9/11 and post-9/11.
Yeah, points, I think, are good points on which to pause here as time has elapsed. Royal and Reed again, CEO at thecmiteam.com. And we'll continue here with more of the program. I'm Jim Bohannon, and this is Westwood One.